basically, she told me if I could join the course that you're having and share a bit about media management. And I told her I would like to share about business model canvas because I think it would be important for you draw your business plan, understand better the company that you're gonna work, or maybe the company that you're gonna found, be a founder of a company, right? So yeah, I'm gonna be slowly for you can translate.
Oke, jadi memang waktu itu saya minta, karena saya tahu bidangnya Matias ini tentang manajemen media, saya minta tolong, boleh dong sharing ke mahasiswa saya, gitu. Dan dia bilang, oke, saya kayaknya mau fokus bahas model bisnis, terutama bisnis model Canvas. Untuk teman-teman nanti jadi masukan ketika melakukan riset tentang ini, ataupun bahkan mau membangun media sendiri, gitu, sehingga tahu basicnya itu harus seperti apa. Okay, Matthias, back to you.
Can I share my screen?
Oh, of course. Sure.
Let's see if I can. Yeah, here's the slides. Let's start sharing. Oh, wait, let's stop. Let's see if you can see my screen.
Yes.
So it's appearing your face on the side or not? It's fine. You can see the full slide, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So Amal probably told you that I'm part of a project that is called Jolt. So in this project, I'm researching about data journalism in the world. It was supposed to be in the world, but right now, because of the pandemic, I'm in Brazil. I could join a media company in Argentina before the pandemic. I went to ProPublica in US, but then the pandemic came, and then here I am without. I cannot do anything right now, so we are waiting the situation getting better. So basically, yeah, you can translate. Sorry, Amal.
Jadi ya dia menceritakan apa yang saya sampaikan tadi juga. Studi S3-nya itu nama proyeknya Jolt, bagian dari proyek yang didanai oleh Uni Eropa. Jadi sama dengan beasiswa kami dulu saat S2 pakai Erasmus, ini untuk S3-nya. Seharusnya dia meneliti jurnalisme data di seluruh negara, nggak seluruh sih, sebanyak negara di dunia. Harusnya keliling seperti yang saya sampaikan tadi, tapi karena pandemi akhirnya proyeknya harus berhenti sementara. Sebelum pandemi sempat meneliti ke Argentina, sempat ke US. Dulu sih harusnya juga ke Singapura, ke mana lagi ya? Indonesia sih sempat sih ada rencana, but anyway. So yeah, Matthias, continue.
So today I want to talk about this business model canvas. So first we want to understand what is a business model. So here we have two definitions that I think will be useful for you. Try to understand what is that. So business model is a way to describe the rationale of how your organization creates and delivers and captures value. So yeah.
Jadi model bisnis itu maksudnya untuk menjelaskan apa saja sih dasar bagi suatu organisasi untuk menciptakan, mendeliver, dan capture ya menangkap nilai, value. So yeah.
Yeah. So and then we can understand what is the business model by understanding the interconnected and interdependent activities that build this company. So we have to look there are different ways to analyze that. And one of these ways is the business model canvas that I'm going to present to you today. So the idea here is to present what is business model canvas, then coming with an example of Skype. And then if you have time allows, I'm going to talk about BuzzFeed because I think it's a company that everyone knows, and then you can understand how is this evolution of your business model and understand what fits in each of these boxes that we call 9 building blocks of business model canvas.
Jadi untuk menjelaskan mengenai model bisnis ini, dia akan memakai konsep BMC, Business Model Canvas, yang mana menurut dia ini cara yang cukup sederhana ya untuk memahami mengenai model bisnis. Nanti dia akan menggunakan contoh Skype dan juga akan menggunakan contoh BuzzFeed yang dia rasa teman-teman juga familiar gitu dengan BuzzFeed. Kurang lebih seperti itu. And by the way, Matthias, Actually, before this class, like 2 weeks earlier, I already asked my students to study about, like, do a mini research
Yeah.
about business model of digital media in Indonesia.
Oh, that's good.
So I hope they could also share it with you later on.
Yeah, definitely.
So continue, please.
That would be good. So how many minutes do we have?
I could give you 20 minutes. Is it enough?
Okay,
30?
perfect. Yeah, perfect. So wait. So for we understand why business model are important today. So we have our organization, or for example, our news media organization. You want to understand how we create a product or a service and deliver it to our customers. That in this case is our audience, and this audience will like somehow evaluate what we are delivering to them, and this is the way that we are bringing revenue for our company. So today, why is important journalists understand that, not only journalists but news work in general, because today the boundaries of what is journalism is expanding to encompass things that we are not supposed to do in the past. For example, taking care of social media, or for example, apply to grants that is very common. You're going to see in news media organizations in Indonesia, in Brazil, in Argentina. So yeah.
Before I translate it, I didn't really get apply to rank. What do you mean?
So
Sorry.
apply to sorry.
You mentioned something. It's also applied in Indonesia.
To grants, like
Grants.
foundation grants.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
No problem. Jadi teman-teman, kenapa sih penting untuk mempelajari mengenai model bisnis? Karena misalnya kita memiliki atau bekerja di suatu organisasi, utamanya organisasi media, kita akan menciptakan produk, gitu. Kemudian produk tersebut tersampaikan kepada pengguna sebagai user, lalu kemudian sedikit banyak kan pengguna ini akan menilai dari layanan yang kita berikan tadi, yang kemudian akan mendatangkan pendapatan bagi perusahaan kita. Nah, masalahnya juga sekarang kenapa ini semakin penting, karena perusahaan media itu sudah sudah liquid gitu ya, udah cair gitu. Sekarang banyak hal, kamu kalau jadi jurnalis ataupun bekerja di perusahaan media, urusannya bukan cuma bikin berita aja, tapi juga mencari duit gitu ya, cari cuan, mencari pendanaan, makanya dia bilang grants tadi, dan ngurus media sosial juga, jadi itu kurang lebihnya. So yeah, Matthias.
Yeah. So, sorry. So here we have what we call business model canvas. You're going to see that it's 9 building blocks that we call, because are 9 blocks that we're going to see later. And this was first described or created by this guy called Alexander Osterwalder. And so based on his study about the different parts of a business model, he created this business model canvas that is a visual tool for we understand better our business, and then we can build our business plan. We can sell this to foundations, to philanthropic foundations, to receive money from them, and also to understand better how we bring value for our audience.
Oke, jadi bisnis model canvas ini yang membuat dulu pertama kali si Alexander Osterwalder, ada 9 blok, karena memang ada terdiri dari 9 ya, bisa teman-teman lihat di PPT-nya. Tujuannya sebenarnya untuk memvisualisasikan, sehingga lebih mudah untuk dipahami mengenai model bisnismu itu seperti apa. Sehingga nanti ketika kamu menawarkan kepada investor, ketika menawarkan ke orang-orang yang ingin mendanai, itu akan lebih mudah dipahami, oh apa aja sih yang akan dilakukan sama organisasi ini. Oke, Matthias.
So here we can we can see this business model canvas as 4 questions. So it's like journalism that we have like what, who. So here we have like how, what, and who, and how much. So if you divide this way, we can understand and fill these building blocks with these questions.
Oke, jadi Kalau bicara tentang bisnis model Canvas itu, kita tuh sebenarnya mempertanyakan dulu ya ke bisnis kita, mempertanyakan 4 hal yang menurut dia sebenarnya sama kayak kalau teman-teman sudah familiar ya dengan konsep 5W 1H di jurnalistik. Nah, kalau di model bisnis kita bertanya tentang bagaimana, apa, siapa, dan berapa.
So here we have the real business model canvas. So here we have like different building blocks that I'm going to explain really fast because the time doesn't allow us, we go in detail. But if we look from the left side, it's focused on efficiency. So it's like key partners, key activities, key resource. And on the right side, we have the part that is like bringing value. So our customer relationship, our customer segments, or the channels that we are discussing. So this basically, if you look from the left side, is this efficiency, and the right is bringing value. Usually people start from the right to the left when fulfill this. So because you know your customer, so you understand who you want to achieve.
Oke, jadi ini gambaran bisnis model Canvas itu, dan ini akan dia jelaskan satu persatu, tapi mungkin agak cepat karena nggak memungkinkan untuk bahas ini secara detail. Kalau teman-teman lihat di bagian kiri, key partners, key activities, key resources, itu menunjukkan sisi efisiensi dari organisasimu. Nah, sedangkan yang di bagian sisi kanan, customer relationship, channels, dan kawan-kawan, itu fokus ke membawa value ke organisasimu. Nah, biasanya kalau kita menganalisis menggunakan bisnis model Canvas ini, kita mulai dari kanan. Jadi kita cari tahu dulu apa value dari organisasi kita, baru kita bisa menentukan apa yang kita harus lakukan supaya organisasi kita tuh bisa efisien.
So yeah, and on the bottom part, we have what is our expenses, so what is our cost structure, and our revenue stream. So where are we gonna find money to sustain our business?
Nah, sedangkan yang di bagian bawah itu bicara tentang cuan ya, bicara tentang duit, tentang expenses, pengeluaran dari organisasi dan pemasukan. Jadi juga dari revenue streams, kira-kira pemasukannya berapa dan dari mana uang itu akan berasal, kurang lebih gitu.
So here we have an example that is the Skype business model when it started. So basically what I want to show here for you is these arrows that show that there is a relationship between one block and another. So we have like two types of users in this Skype, the ones that pay and the ones that are free. So the ones that pay are the ones that are calling on the phone. So they are the ones who are paying a prepaid Skype money to use that. So, or have a subscription, and then to have cheap calls, international or national. And the ones that are using the version free, so they can only use like what we call voice over IP, so call between Skype numbers, Skype users, let's say.
Oke, jadi dia menggunakan contoh Skype untuk menjelaskan mengenai BMC ini. Dia ingin teman-teman fokus juga ke panahnya. Panah di sini menunjukkan bahwa ada keterkaitan antar blocks atau antar kolom di bisnis model Canvas ini. Nah, bisa dilihat di sini terbagi dua ya untuk pengguna Skype. Ada yang orang-orang yang membayar menggunakan Skype karena dia supaya murah gitu untuk nelpon. Terutama misalnya ke luar negeri. Saya juga, seingat saya punya kenalan sih yang seperti itu. Punya kenalan yang rela bayar Skype supaya dia bisa nelpon murah. Tapi itu pakai nomor telepon gitu ya, bukan kayak video call yang kita selama ini kan kalau Skype biasanya video call. Nah, sedangkan umumnya secara global pengguna internet itu pakai layanan Skype secara gratis, di mana kita biasanya kalau teman-teman nggak tahu ya saya, apakah sudah pernah mencoba Skype atau belum, itu nanti kita kayak ada ID-nya Skype gitu lah ya, nomor telepon Skype, nanti kita bisa saling berkomunikasi lewat itu. Bisa video juga sih. Skype is allowing us to do video call, right?
Yeah, like video call, like Zoom. Yeah, right.
Yes.
Definitely.
Okay, continue.
I'm understanding Indonesia. So here we're going to talk a little bit about the evolution of BuzzFeed business model. So we are starting with a news organization for you to understand a little bit. For who doesn't know BuzzFeed, but I think most of you should know or probably know it. It was founded by three people. That is Jonah Peretti, who is still the founder, is still working with the organization. And then we have Ariana from the Huffington Post, so Ariana Huffington. And then we have the other one that is the developer, that is the Kenneth Lutter. So they three joined their forces to build BuzzFeed, and BuzzFeed would become first an organization that was focused on, how can I say, memes and the content that was like very entertainment content. So it's not like serious news. And the revenue came basically from native advertising. So sponsored by brands that wanted their content to be on the platform. And they only have the serious journalism, so only have journalism as we know in 2011, when they hired this awarded journalist called Ben Smith, that is now in the New York Times. So yeah, basically I want to introduce that, then Amal can.
Oke, jadi tadi kan dia sempat menjelaskan tentang Skype secara sekilas, tapi dia mau bahasnya juga mengenai bisnis model Canvas ini, mengenai BuzzFeed ya. Dia menggunakan contoh ini karena menurut dia cukup terkenal di berbagai negara, jadi dia mengasumsikan teman-teman juga tahu mengenai BuzzFeed ini. Apakah ada yang tahu? Kira-kira? Boleh dong raise hand kalau yang tahu BuzzFeed, sambil saya cek nanti di partisipan. Jadi BuzzFeed ini dibikin sama 3 orang, Jonah Peretti, Ariana Huffington, dan Kenneth Lehrer. Kemudian kalau BuzzFeed ini seperti yang dia sampaikan tadi, beritanya itu lebih ke entertainment, bukan berita-berita serius ya, seperti media pada umumnya. Ya mungkin BuzzFeed ini kalau teman-teman tahu IDN Times ya di Indonesia, kurang lebih seperti itu. Jadi IDN Times is actually following BuzzFeed gitu. Kita udah pernah, sorry, saya dan Matias, we are doing research also about IDN Times, which is kind of similar with BuzzFeed, right, Matias? That's what I'm trying to tell my students.
So, yeah, it would be good.
Okay.
To compare something.
Yes, yes. Because maybe some of them not really familiar with BuzzFeed, so I will continue first a little bit. Jadi seperti IDN Times ya, beritanya itu pakai listicles. Jadi kayak ini dia 5 hal apa ya? 5 hal yang ini nomor 5 yang paling mengejutkanmu, kurang lebih kan seperti itu. Itu sebenarnya trennya dimulai sama BuzzFeed, lalu di Indonesia diikuti sama beberapa media termasuk IDN Times. Dia juga seringnya nge-share memes, nge-share konten-konten clickbait. Nah, penghasilannya BuzzFeed ini asalnya dari native advertising, jadi iklan-iklan advertorial ya, yang dia masuk ke dalam naskah. Jadi bukan iklan banner yang biasa kita temui di media, tapi dia iklan yang bentuknya konten, di mana kadang kita nggak sadar kalau itu iklan. Jadi memang lebih banyak dananya yang masuk ke BuzzFeed ini asalnya dari brand, gitu, dari produk-produk yang ingin mengiklankan di BuzzFeed. Baru kemudian di tahun 2011, BuzzFeed mulai agak serius, jadi dia mulai menjadi media berita beneran, gitu, bukan cuma media entertainment, dengan meng-hire Ben Smith, jadi salah satu jurnalis senior lah ya, direkrut sama mereka untuk menciptakan apa ya, nuansa berita apa ya, menciptakan salah satu rubrik yang cukup serius lah, news di BuzzFeed. So yeah.
So as I told you, like memes, so it was cute cats on their platform, and people would love to interact with that. So I'm going to the next one because it will be like similar. So basically, the platform started with that. So their key partners was their community, that people that they want to talk, or their advertisers. So the key activities that they have was the IT, because they have a platform that will use this viral content to reach a mass audience, and their content that was like these memes and these cute cats that I just showed you. And I'm going to talk about 3, and then you can translate, right? So, and the key resources that they had at the time was the platform, as I told you, their community, and they user-generate content, because people could enter in the platform and share create a content that was based on their, or share memes, or create a story about that.
Oke. Jadi ini gambaran bisnis model kanvasnya BuzzFeed ya. Yang mana yang menjadi partner utama dalam bisnis ini adalah pengiklan, karena mereka yang ngasih cuan ya, dan community-nya atau dalam artian audiens mereka yang membaca konten mereka. Aktivitas utama mereka tentunya karena mereka itu basicnya adalah media digital gitu ya. Jadi mereka bangun platform sehingga tentunya aktivitasnya berkaitan sama IT dan kemudian juga konten, karena ya mereka kan juga bikin konten. Tapi walaupun kontennya memang cenderung yang awal-awal tuh kan entertainment banget, memes, dan dia bilang kayak contohnya foto kucing gitu ya, itu yang sering aktivitas yang mereka sering lakukan. Kemudian untuk sumber utamanya mereka, resources itu apa ya? Sumber daya ya. Sumber daya ada 3 dari platformnya itu sendiri. Jadi maksudnya ibaratnya apa sih yang mereka punya gitu kan? Yang mereka punya itu ya platform yang mereka bangun. Kemudian mereka punya komunitas audiensnya itu tadi, dan user generated content. Ini konten yang dibikin oleh pengguna. Mungkin teman-teman yang ngambil cyber dengan saya ini sempat bahas juga ya mengenai UGC. Di mana kalau dulu kan umumnya perusahaan media itu ya jurnalisnya yang bikin konten atau bikin berita lah ya. Sedangkan si BuzzFeed ini membangun suatu model di mana pengguna itu juga bisa bikin konten lalu dimuat di platform mereka gitu. Jadi kayak memes, foto-foto lucu itu seringkali justru asalnya dari pengguna. Jadi kayak ibarat kita contoh UGC yang lain ya kayak medsos yang lain ya, Facebook, Twitter dan kawan-kawan itu UGC. Tapi kalau BuzzFeed ini kan dia dalam bentuk platform media. Kalau jadi khusus dan sudah dikurasi misalnya oleh orang-orang BuzzFeed. Jadi nggak kayak kalau kita di medsos kan kita mau upload apa aja bisa, sedangkan kalau BuzzFeed atau di IDN Times teman-teman mau kirim konten kan akan ada proses seleksinya. Ya. Yeah.
So yeah, and then this content, their proposition, their value proposition, what they want to bring to the audience was fun, was an entertainment content. So the customer relationship was this community, so was being part of this group, and their social medias was mainly Twitter and Facebook, and then the BuzzFeed website. But they usually to bring people to their website through their channels, I mean social media channels like Twitter and Facebook. So their customer segment was readers, people who want to read about fun stuff. And just to finish, because I think will be short, and the cost structure was basically on the IT, was the infrastructure to have like servers, shipping servers. So they didn't have to hire journalists and people in general. And the revenue stream in the beginning was almost zero because they had like this zero marginal cost of reproducing this content, so they didn't have expenses. And then after a couple of years, they bring this native content that they thought that will be the way to sustain their business. But then in the future, they, in the present, they realized that native content would be not enough. So, and then we're going to see this evolution in the next slides.
Okay. Jadi untuk value yang mereka berusaha bawa itu fun ya, entertainment. Memang awalnya kan sebagai media yang untuk happy-happy aja. Kemudian customer relationship, hubungan yang dibangun ya dengan komunitasnya. Kalau teman-teman familiar dengan IDN ya, IDN Times itu juga bahkan punya kolom sendiri. Buat teman-teman yang mau berkontribusi konten ke mereka, itu kan teman-teman dianggap sebagai IDN Times community. So Matthias, before I continue, actually I was just telling them that in IDN Times, they actually have this, what should I, segment maybe, that said, join our community, become IDN Times community. Is it also something that happens in BuzzFeed?
Yeah, at the beginning was very similar, this idea of this community. It still happened, they have this community, but it's not as strong as used in the past. But because the COVID and everything, the last 2 years are being very hard for them, so they are focused on other stuff. But in the beginning was exactly like IDN. What is it? IDN, right?
IDN.
IDN Times. ID Times. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I will continue a little bit. Jadi itu ya, dia membangun komunitas Jadi sama kayak IDN sekarang berusaha membangun komunitas orang-orang yang mau share konten. Kalau di IDN seingat saya, teman-teman kalau bikin konten nanti dapat poin, poinnya itu kalau sudah terkumpul bisa ditukarkan menjadi uang gitu. Dan kemudian juga tapi tadi dia sampaikan, Matias sampaikan bahwa di awal memang BuzzFeed sangat kuat komunitasnya, tapi kemudian perlahan-lahan mulai tidak sekuat dulu, apalagi sekarang saat pandemi dan juga 2 tahun terakhir mungkin ada pergeseran-pergeseran gitu ya di perusahaan mereka, jadi agak melemah. Kemudian channel yang mereka gunakan untuk mempromosikan kali ya produk mereka. Produk mereka kan berupa platform ya. Itu lewat sosial media tentunya. Saya dulu paling sering dapat saya dulu mengenal BuzzFeed awalnya dari Facebook ya. Jadi dulu banyak yang share di Facebook dan tentunya dari website mereka sendiri BuzzFeed itu. Segmen mereka tentunya pembaca dari media mereka kan tidak semua pembaca ya berkontribusi bikin konten. Ada yang ikut bikin konten, ada yang sekedar jadi silent reader gitu ya atau membaca doang gitu. Kemudian untuk bicara mengenai expenses-nya, tentunya yang paling banyak mereka keluar dananya dari IT-nya. Bentuk platformnya ini yang paling banyak keluar duitnya. Jadi bukan untuk mendanai jurnalis atau lain-lain, karena mereka awalnya memang tidak pakai jurnalis. Duitnya keluarnya buat membangun sistem platform mereka. Untuk pemasukannya, ini nol, dia bilang kan, zero gitu. Terus baru kemudian mulai pakai native content itu tadi. Jadi iklan yang sifatnya advertorial, yang mana itu brand mengiklan dalam bentuk konten, nah itu mereka bayar ke BuzzFeed. Tapi kemudian kata Matias sih, ini ternyata nggak cukup gitu, karena terbukti bahwa selama beberapa tahun terakhir, bahkan saat pandemi ini itu BuzzFeed, saya lupa, saya sempat mention ini nggak ya saya lupa di kelas online journalism atau di manajemen media yang saya mention ini, bahwa BuzzFeed itu saat pandemi bahkan menutup kantornya di Inggris sama Aussie, karena memang akhirnya mereka menyadari, mereka kalau cuma mengandalkan uangnya dari native content ini tuh nggak cukup gitu. Apalagi mereka sekarang kan makin gede, tentu makin banyak pengeluaran, makin banyak karyawan, tapi pemasukannya hanya based on native content gitu. So yeah, Matias. By the way, before you continue, I just want to ask, because for IDN Times, those who join the IDN Times community and contribute content will get points, and then those points can be converted into money. Is it also happening?
No, in BuzzFeed, no, they didn't have that. The participation was like, the idea was being part of this community. That's what they sell to these people, not money. It's not like TikTok or other platforms that you receive money.
Oke. So ya, jadi kalau di BuzzFeed ini ternyata memang dia cuma membangun value sebagai komunitas aja, tapi nggak ngasih duit. Oke, Matias.
Yeah. So BuzzFeed have several evolutions on their business model, but we are going to jump from the first one that was very basic to the one that I would say before the pandemic in 2019, that they tried to build a multi-revenue stream business model that is combine different revenue streams. Because I think that's the biggest problem that the media industry faces right now, is find a revenue stream that will be enough to sustain their business. So the first thing that happened, as I mentioned to you, they try to bring they brought the news side, the serious journalism to BuzzFeed in 2011. And then this brings somehow, I would say, value that they have not only this fun content, but they also bring something that is important to the society. So they want to inform people. Is that what Peretti, the founder, said, that BuzzFeed from 2011 is not only about fun, but it's about fun and information. And that's the reason they used to have like really big investigations and things like that.
Oke. Jadi Matias ini mengatakan, berusaha menjelaskan mengenai transisi yang terjadi di BuzzFeed dari yang sebelumnya hanya media yang entertainment, fun-fun doang, kemudian dia sekarang mulai menjadi media yang mau serius juga. Jadi juga menjadi media yang bermanfaat buat publik, karena memang kan tugasnya media itu ya, kalau kita bicara idealisme dari suatu perusahaan media. Jadi makanya si foundernya sendiri bilang sejak tahun 2011 BuzzFeed itu bukan cuma fun tapi informatif gitu. Iya.
Yeah. So, and then they also try to bring, this is cutting a little bit, bring more data approach to their business. So they try to build platforms. They said they have more than 9 solutions that they build like themselves about how to use data to understand better the audience. One, for example, is just one they call Pound. That is a process for optimizing and understand the network diffusion. So how one content drives from one social media to another. So they use this data-driven approach to understand better their audience. So it's one of these evolutions try to use analytics to understand better their audience.
Wait, I kind of confused myself. So
Yeah.
anyway, teman-teman, jadi dia BuzzFeed mulai pakai pendekatan data. So wait, Matthias, which one is called Pound? The one that in the right side of your?
No, it's like to understand, because people on social media, they think that we saw is like only content driving one platform, but with this platform, they understand how one content drive from one platform to another to optimize this viral content, you know. So this is what their solution, that the algorithm that they built, what they do is try to understand how we can go from Facebook to Twitter to Pinterest or to TikTok, so to different platforms.
Oke. Jadi karena dia itu pakai pendekatan data ya, pengembangan algoritma, yang mana disebut sama BuzzFeed itu teknologi mereka sebutannya Pound, yang merupakan singkatan dari Process for Optimizing and Understanding Network Diffusion. Jadi kadang kita kan cuma ngeliat, oh ada konten di BuzzFeed, ada konten BuzzFeed di Facebook, ada konten BuzzFeed di Twitter gitu. Tapi sebenarnya mereka membangun supaya konten ini bisa viral tuh bentuk jaringan gitu. Jadi dari Facebook itu bisa nyambung ke Pinterest, bisa nyambung ke Twitter, bisa nyambung ke Instagram, bisa nyambung kemana-mana, ke semua media sosial sehingga akhirnya jadi viral. Karena kalau hanya di satu platform aja tentunya kan ya nggak terlalu ramai mungkin ya yang ngelihat konten tersebut, tapi mereka harus membangun itu tadi network tadi, jaringan tadi agar kontennya ini bisa viral.
Yeah. So this way they are bringing more technology to their business, because they used to be a viral company, viral content, driving by viral content, but now they are driving by data as well. But then in the last transition, they also found that they have like brands that are very important for them, for Tasty, do it yourself, and these brands could represent a new revenue stream. So what they did was like trying to sell products with these brands on their website, try to sell products with these brands on supermarket, for example, Walmart, that they use to sell these brands. And besides that, they also try to license these brands and create content. For example, in Brazil, when BuzzFeed was here yet, they create an ice cream taste based on the views of taste. So they said there is like a ice cream maker. Then they said like tastes by, ice cream by Tasty. So then they developed like 5 flavors that was based on the most rich, the most, how can I say, popular recipes on the Taste channel. And this transition was also based on video. So they have this pivot to video. So video become a really important part of their business because they saw that they could get revenue from YouTube. So YouTube turned in another revenue stream, not only the brands, but also build these brands on other social media platforms.
Okay. So I need to confirm something first.
Yeah.
So the Tasty and the DIY part of BuzzFeed is their innovation to get more revenues from brands.
Yeah, it starts with a channel that they build on their website, and then they turn on video. So they have like videos related to taste. There is like Taste brand and do it yourself. And then this got really strong, so people start using these brands and get very popular. So they start selling products with these brands, and then have this license of their brands to sell, for example, I don't know, a spoon in Walmart that has like Taste brand.
Okay. So they're working together with brands to create this new products, something
Yeah,
like.
exactly.
I actually did not aware of this. I mean, I watch a lot of tasty videos, but did not aware of
Yeah,
any, to be honest.
yeah, they were investing a lot on this last year, I think 2019 and 2018 they start, but it's very popular in US. I think that's good also you explained to yours, because in other countries it's quite different how they work. For example, in Brazil they work with this ice cream maker, but it's not common. For example, in UK they have like brands of BuzzFeed popular as well. So it's like they try to adapt to each market. So that's the reason they are stronger in US. One reason is because their headquarters are there, but the other reason is because there they have a really strong brand.
Oke. Oke, jadi teman-teman, tadi kan sudah disebutkan bahwa mereka terus berinovasi ya. Salah satunya dari yang awalnya hanya bergantung pada konten yang viral, lalu mereka bermain dengan data, kemudian mereka mulai menciptakan rubrik kali ya, rubrik baru gitu di media mereka. Dua di antaranya itu Tasty dan DIY. Ya, mungkin teman-teman pernah lihat juga ya videonya tersebar di berbagai jenis media sosial. Itu agak kalau Tasty itu mungkin teman-teman familiar, dia kan endingnya itu biasanya ada nada tasty apa gitu lah ya. Saya agak bingung juga sih jelasinnya, tapi saya sampai udah hafal gitu. Jadi mereka akhirnya mulai menciptakan itu untuk berinovasi supaya semakin banyak penghasilan dan cuan buat perusahaan mereka. Jadi mereka bikin konten video dari awalnya cuma memes, yang awalnya cuma foto-foto, sekarang mulai bikin video. Yang mana videonya itu kalau teman-teman lihat gaya ngambil video makanan dari angle atas gitu ya, lalu simple gitu, itu sebenarnya salah satu yang mulai tren itu adalah BuzzFeed, yang kemudian diikuti oleh berbagai macam content creator dan berbagai produk gitu. Dan juga di IDN sendiri juga punya sih khusus untuk masak-masak yang memang sebenarnya menurut saya sih ngikutin Tasty banget gitu. Jadi itu salah satu cara mereka berinovasi untuk mengembangkan model bisnis mereka. Jadi mereka bikin rubrik Tasty dan DIY, terus udah mulai viral juga kan. Akhirnya banyak brand yang mau kerjasama, bahkan mereka misalnya bikin produk, ini loh sendok merek Tasty gitu misalnya, atau yang muncul di video Tasty itu dijual di Walmart. Jadi makanya saya tanyakan tadi, saya kok nggak pernah aware ya ada promosi macam ini di video mereka. Kata dia memang ini lebih ke US based, jadi besarnya itu di Amerika gitu. Jadi kayak trendingnya itu di Amerika. Karena di berbagai negara mungkin beberapa model bisnisnya tidak bisa diterapkan. Jadi karena di US itu adalah kantor utama mereka, headquarters-nya mereka. Jadi mereka lebih fokusnya di sana. Dan juga mereka akan lebih ngerti, kalau audiens di US itu harus seperti apa sih supaya tertarik dan lain-lain.
So as I said, I'm going to be fast on this slide and then we go to the next one. So they are saying about a lot of this video that how was important that on BuzzFeed, and then it represents more of the 50% of total revenue of BuzzFeed. So that's the reason they have this, what they call pivot to video. So then, as I mentioned to you, they have like these new brands, and they also start to build to have series with TV channels. So they try to build their brand really strong to be beyond their own platform, because one thing they understand is the platforms is useful to drive audience to their content, but their dependence on the platforms is really a problem, because for example Facebook changed their algorithm, and then the content that they appears more to you would be your friends and family instead of news. So that's the reason they said we need to not be in this embryonic relationship with social media, but we need to be to build a business model that is really strong and try to get revenue from different resources.
Oke, jadi mereka mencoba itu ya, berinovasi terus, membangun berbagai jenis resources, karena mereka merasa pertama, memang kebanyakan konten mereka tuh bisa viral, bisa dilihat orang-orang itu karena orang-orang ngelihatnya di platform media sosial, dari Facebook, Twitter, dan lain-lain gitu. Nah, mereka nggak mau terus-terusan bergantung sama media sosial. Mereka nggak mau, oh orang harus lihat media sosial dulu baru tahu kontennya BuzzFeed. Jadi mereka berusaha sebisa mungkin gimana caranya orang tuh kenal BuzzFeed sebagai BuzzFeed gitu. Karena ya itu tadi misalnya Facebook sering ganti-ganti algoritma yang dampaknya bukan konten BuzzFeed yang Anda lihat di timeline, tapi malah konten ya orang-orang terdekat gitu ya, orang-orang yang sering kita ajak interaksi, ya, keluarga, teman. Nah ini kenapa akhirnya BuzzFeed terus-terusan berinovasi, menciptakan inovasi baru supaya ya itu tadi orang membuka BuzzFeed ya dari platformnya BuzzFeed bukan dari medsos.
Yeah, so here we have an overview of their last business model in 2019, how it was like built. So you see that in the yellow was the beginning, and then we have these evolutions that we add the different colors to show that. So now they have like their key partners are also TV channels where they sell their brands or they produce content together. So their traffic are not only based on social media now, they want to bring traffic from their website. So they have a data-driven approach. So now the audience not only participate on the content that they use in the platform, but they also are part of their analysis and the things that will drive the business strategy. But the most important thing, I think, will be the revenue stream that I think is one of the big challenges of the industry. So we see that their content is still like zero marginal cost, that to reproduce is cheap, so you can easily reproduce. But then they add things that will be important to get revenue. So sponsor content, they never remove that from their business. So they have native advertising, they add programmatic ads. So it's that ads that are in their website. They have this partnership where they license their brands, and now they sell their products as well, so merchandising, and also revenue from videos. So now what happened with the pandemic, they end up their operations in Brazil, only the news side, and they are looking for a partner to continue that in Germany. So the idea is also to have someone who can use their brand in Germany and also pay to license their brand to use BuzzFeed News in Germany. So yeah, the pandemic affect them really hard because, as you can see, ads are a very important part of their business. Because even though they have these partners with the supermarket, with the TV channels, all of them are somehow intertwined with the ad industry. So that's the reason they suffer a lot. So yeah, I'm going to let you Amal translate because it's a lot of things.
Oke. Jadi teman-teman, sebelumnya saya mau koreksi dulu. Berarti tadi maksudnya kenapa ada 0 itu di revenue streams-nya, karena dia nggak keluar banyak biaya ya, marginnya 0. Ibaratnya dia bikin konten kan nggak perlu modal dulunya gitu. Kayak pertama dari user yang bikin konten, ataupun mereka bikin konten-konten sendiri cuma comot sana-sini kan nggak perlu modal. Anyway, yang ditunjukkan Matias ini, perubahannya tadi kan yang awal ditunjukkan di slide-slide sebelumnya itu kan masih dikit banget ya, masih yang kuning-kuning itu doang kan. Nah, semakin berkembangnya BuzzFeed, tentunya mereka harus mengembangkan, berinovasi terus dengan model bisnis mereka. Jadi misalnya dari partnernya, mereka tidak lagi hanya mengandalkan pengiklanan community, tapi ada channel TV. Terus juga bisa dilihat mereka tidak di key resource-nya nambah banyak ya. Mereka punya reporter, punya kontributor, punya orang yang ngadain, punya orang-orang yang ngerjain deep analytics curation, yaitu mengkurasi kontennya, kemudian media brands, videos, karena kan makin banyak jenis kontennya di BuzzFeed juga, ini harus nambah. Reporter ya karena mereka akhirnya bikin news yang serius itu tadi. Kemudian juga bisa dilihat paling banyak perubahan di revenue streams-nya. Mereka memang masih mempertahankan konten dengan sponsor, itu tadi native advertising juga, dan iklan yang banner sifatnya yang muncul entah di saat kita buka situsnya atau di bagian kanan, kiri, atas, bawah dalam suatu page. Mereka bangun partnership juga, lalu juga bikin produk itu tadi ya, misalnya bikin produk alat makan ala tasty gitu, terus juga bikin video itu tadi. Jadi semakin banyak gitu sumber pemasukannya mereka. Tapi kemudian ketika pandemi seperti sekarang, mereka juga sangat terdampak gitu. Kenapa? Ya karena itu tadi salah satu sumber revenue mereka, sumber pemasukan mereka dari iklan. Dan bisa teman-teman lihat kan sekarang ketika profit banyak perusahaan turun, tentunya yang paling cepat di-cut atau dipotong dari budgeting ya di setiap perusahaan itu mereka motong budget iklan. Dulu kan budget iklan cukup besar ya untuk perusahaan-perusahaan. Tapi mereka sekarang kan milihnya mau motong budget iklan atau PHK karyawan ya mungkin lebih baik ya potong budget iklannya aja. Itu akhirnya kan berdampak sekali ke banyak perusahaan media termasuk si BuzzFeed ini. Makanya tadi Matias cerita di Brazil aja ditutup, BuzzFeed yang news ya, yang berita itu ditutup, dan sekarang mereka mau bikin di Jerman, yang mana mereka juga sifatnya kayak mau jualan license gitu, kayak kamu boleh kok bikin BuzzFeed Jerman, tapi kamu bayar license-nya kayak franchise gitu kali ya. Teman-teman kalau mau jualan es gitu kan, chat time gitu, mau buka chat time di sini, itu kan teman-teman beli beli ininya ya, license-nya gitu. So yeah.
Yeah. So I have here my Twitter is the last one, and then my email. If you want, you can contact me. And I also want to share that with Amal, and you can also ask me anything. I don't know if you have time for questions, or even if they want to share something about Indonesia or things that they find similar. I don't know how many minutes do we still?
We still have quite some time.
Oh, okay, that's good.
So yeah, thanks a lot, Matthias, for all the things that you have shared with us. It's really interesting, of course, especially for the students. Maybe they're not really familiar with the business model canvas before, and especially for media organizations. So that's really awesome. Jadi teman-teman, itu tadi ya penjelasan dari Matias. Gimana? Paham atau enggak? Angkat tangan kalau Anda tidak paham. Kira-kira dapat tapi dapat gambaran nggak bisnis model canvas itu seperti apa? Gimana? Dapat gambaran nggak bisnis model canvas itu apa dan gunanya apa? Jawab dengan jujur.
Bu Amal, saya mau coba. Mau make sure aja. Jadi kalau yang tadi ada petak-petak itu kan model bisnis canvas-nya. Berarti istilahnya model bisnis canvas ini tuh berkesinambungan, tapi terjadi dari beberapa area. Maksudnya adalah berarti kita mau mastiin dulu untuk yang di tabel sebelah kanan tadi, baru setelah itu kita sinkronkan ke yang tabel sebelah kiri, baru nanti hasilnya adalah tabel yang bawah.
Oke, iya. Kurang lebih seperti itu kok, Dip. So Matthias, I was asking them, do they get what business model canvas is? And one of them is trying to explain what she understands from your slides. So she explained what business model canvas according to her. And she did it really good anyway.
Oh, good. That's good. But of course, if they have doubts, if you wanna also the book that is in English. Sorry, I don't have Indonesian, but if you wanna, I can share as well. I have that.
Oke. Jadi gitu ya teman-teman. Seperti yang disebutkan Dibi tadi, bisnis model canvas itu ya berbagai aspek komponen ya petak-petak itu tadi saling berkesinambungan satu sama lain. Tujuannya untuk memvisualisasikan sebenarnya model bisnis organisasi kamu itu seperti apa. Kamu dapat duitnya dari mana, kamu pengeluarannya apa aja. Itu sebenarnya bisa dimanfaatkan untuk berbagai hal ya, berbagai jenis bisnis, nggak hanya perusahaan media aja. Teman-teman kalau punya wirausaha sendiri gitu, jualan apapun sebenarnya bisa menggunakan bisnis model canvas ini untuk jelas gitu. Oh, aku tuh pengeluarannya di sini loh. aku tuh kekuatannya di sini loh. Aku tuh perlu ngapain ya? Itu pakai aja bisnis model Canvas itu. Nah, si Matias ini kalau mau, katanya kalau teman-teman mau lebih paham, dia punya resources-nya tapi dalam bahasa Inggris gitu. Tapi kalau ada yang tertarik silahkan. Kira-kira ada yang mau ditanyakan nggak ke Matias?
Tanya, tapi saya nanyanya ke Ibu aja, maksudnya bingung apakah ini udah dibahas atau belum, karena kan pakai bahasa Inggris. Jadi kan saya susah, apa ini udah dibahas atau belum gitu, nggak tahu kan. Nah, saya lebih nanya ke kayak kelemahannya apa sih Bu dari model Canvas ini? Kan dari tadi kan kayak kalau saya lihat di Google ya, hampir banyak perusahaan, nggak cuma media, benar, pakai model bisnis ini. Nah, saya mau nanya, kekurangannya tuh terus apa? Ada nggak?
Oke. Ini pertanyaan bagus kok, Ayu. Belum dijelasin kok tadi.
Alhamdulillah saya paham sedikit.
So, Matias, Ayu was asking, so from what you have explained, it's only business model Canvas is helping us, blah, blah, blah. Is there any weaknesses or negative sides of using business Canvas, or yes, is there any weaknesses of using this model?
Yeah, this is not, you cannot see the whole picture of your organization. You only see this side that is, you are not looking for the part that is inside of your organization. So you're not looking for the professionals that are working there. So you only see the relation with the audience or your customers. So that's one point. And also the other point that is important to have, that is only a tool for you understand better your business. So it's not that it's a solution, but it helps you to understand the relations between your customer, what the value that you want to bring to them, how you're going to get revenue from them. And so that's the relation.
Oke. Jadi Ayu gimana?
I think you need to translate. Sorry.
Jadi memang menurut Matias ya tentunya ada kekurangannya juga ya. Menggunakan bisnis model Canvas ini. Pertama, dia tidak melihat the whole picture gitu ya, tidak melihat secara keseluruhan. Jadi hanya hal-hal tertentu aja yang ada di internal organisasimu. Bahkan tidak melihat misalnya kan ada berbagai divisi gitu ya di dalam organisasi, ke masing-masing profesinya apa, itu kan nggak secara detail dikupas di bisnis model Canvas itu. Kemudian juga yang kedua, bisnis model Canvas ini hanya sekedar alat itu tadi ya, untuk membantu memvisualisasikan itu tadi ya, untuk mengerti bisnis kita sendiri itu seperti apa, atau bisnis suatu perusahaan itu seperti apa. Tapi dia tidak bisa menjadi solusi gitu. Dia hanya ya supaya kamu bisa cari solusi ya kamu harus ngerti dulu gitu kan ya bisnismu seperti apa gitu. Gimana? Menjawab nggak kira-kira Yu? di mute, saya nggak dengar kamu ngomong.
Yeah, it's mute.
Paham Bu, tapi saya lebih paham pas Ibu jelasin sih Bu. Terima kasih Bu. Terima kasih Matias.
She says thank you for your answers, Matias.
Oh, okay.
Terima
We're
kasih,
welcome.
thank you in Indonesia.
Oh, sorry?
Terima kasih.
Makasih.
Ya, makasih. Short way to say it. Ada lagi yang mau bertanya teman-teman? Silahkan.
Saya mau tanya Bu. Good morning before Matias.
Morning.
Matias,
Yeah. It's crossing the word.
In this business models that you have mentioned, BuzzFeed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You say they get the money from advertising, augmented ads, and another content and data to survive. But any other way to get money? Maybe like another business or subscription or crowdfunding maybe? Karena waktu itu Bu Amal kalau di online jurnalis itu pernah jelasin kalau soal model bisnis juga, kalau buat ngedapetin uang nggak cuma dari iklan kan Bu, jadi I want to make sure to Matias.
Okay. So sorry Matias, so you do get her questions, right?
Yeah, it's like only because I said about advertising, but they are also if they can find other revenue streams. And yes, I mean, maybe it's not that clear, but they are also having this license of their brands, and they also get revenues from videos. So somehow it relates to ads, but it's not really ads as the industry start only when you have like the print paper and you have the ads that most of the revenue of the newspaper was from these ads that you used to saw there. So today they are trying to build their brand structure in different ways. So they have this, when you talk about BuzzFeed, they are also producing content for as agents. So they are not only producing content for their website, they are also producing content that people want for their channels. What I mean by channels, their website, their social media is one way. As I said, sponsor content, license of brands, license of products. So for example, in US, they have a supermarket that's called Walmart, and they sell spoons. I don't know if I'll translate that, but they sell spoons that has like the brand Taste. So, and then half of the money goes to Walmart and half of the money goes to BuzzFeed. I'm not half, but just to give an idea. And what else? So they are trying also to get revenue from different sources. For example, bringing back to what I saw here in Latin America, I don't know how it's in Indonesia, but organizations here are trying to get revenue also from courses and consultants. So they are doing, for example, training for journalists or even for students, and this revenue is going to their business, to their business, the journalism business. What else? They are also trying to do here something that they call clubs. So you subscribe to a news organization and you pay the subscription fee, but you have so many benefits that you don't see the payment of this newspaper. For example, this happens in Argentina. Sorry, Amal, you need to translate all that.
Yeah, no problem. So
Can I finish and then you
just
translate
finish.
all? Yeah, and then in Argentina, you have like Club y la Nación, that is like a club with the name of the newspaper. And then the discount that they have in the supermarket is so big that pays the news subscription monthly, so they don't need to be worried about that. So the people see the advantage of subscribing the newspaper. Yeah, I can have more example, but let Amal translate.
Oke, jadi tadi kan Dibi nanya ada nggak sumber pemasukan lain ya, Dip, ya, untuk media gitu kan, terutama BuzzFeed itu tadi. Nah, memang tadi sudah disebutkan beberapa, tidak hanya lewat iklan, tapi memang seringnya berkaitan sama iklan. Jadi kayak mereka bikin video. Matthias, let me ask first, how do they get money from videos other than advertising?
In BuzzFeed, in YouTube, they having the monetization that YouTube pays, and they also, for example, if they are wearing, I don't know, a T-shirt from, I don't know which brand do you have, H&M? Do you have in Indonesia?
Yeah, we have it here.
So H&M, and if the T-shirt is from H&M, they are also being paid by H&M. So they are trying to combine these different things. And as I told you, also, if the brand gets really popular as Taste, they also try to license this brand that was popular in YouTube and all. Yeah.
Oke. Jadi tetap ada kaitannya sama iklan juga sih, Dip, ya. Jadi misalnya ketika mereka bikin video itu kan mereka bisa ada monetisasi di YouTube. Kemudian juga misalnya ya ada si pembawa acaranya pakai kaos brand tertentu, itu kan nanti ditulis, itu kan juga jadi sumber pemasukan mereka. Kemudian tadi yang disebutkan di Walmart itu, mereka kan saking udah populer banget nih Tasty ini, mereka sampai bikin produk-produk dengan brand Tasty dijual di Walmart, yang mana penghasilannya itu, ya Walmart ya kayak ya Superindo kali itu ya, atau Hypermart gitu ya, pokoknya supermarket lah. Jadi mereka jualan sendok dan kawan-kawan pakai brand Tasty, nanti penghasilannya dibagi antara si supermarketnya sama si BuzzFeed-nya ini. Kemudian tadi sumber lainnya misalnya mereka bikin courses ya, bikin pelatihan-pelatihan, misalnya kasih pelatihan training ke jurnalis, ke mahasiswa. And by the way, Matthias, some media in Indonesia also do the same thing.
Also do that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
I imagine.
especially I mentioned to you the Jakarta Post before, right? The Jakarta
Yeah.
Post, English spoken English language media in Indonesia. Yang mana kayak Jakarta Post ini, even Jakarta Post like their other business is translating. If people want to do translation, could also ask them, by the way. So,
Oh, that's good.
jadi kayak di Jakarta Post itu kan, dan mungkin Tempo juga ada ya. Tempo kan suka bikin ya pelatihan-pelatihan, penulisan opini, cerpen, dan lain-lain itu salah satu pemasukan media juga. Bahkan kalau Jakarta Post menurut saya agak lucu, mereka buka jasa penerjemah gitu kan. Karena mereka emang orang-orang yang kerja di sana pintar bahasa Inggris, akhirnya diberdayakan untuk ya udah sekalian nerjemahin, entah mau teman-teman mau nerjemahin skripsi ya nerima-nerima aja kayaknya gitu kan. Terus juga tadi apa lagi ya yang disebutkan? Oh, bikin membership gitu kan. Anda subscribe ke media mereka, kayak contohnya Matthias tadi nggak BuzzFeed sih, tapi ada Club de la Nation ya. The name of the newspaper, right? La Nation. Bahasa
it's good. It's fine.
Jadi dia bikin membership itu, nah keuntungannya di Argentina. So it's in Argentina?
Yeah.
Ya, oke. Jadi jadi ketika kita langganan medianya, kita nggak cuma buat langganan media, dapat keuntungannya, tapi juga dapat diskon di supermarket gitu. Jadi kayak nunjukin ini loh aku member media ini, bisa dapat potongan harga gitu sih, Dit. Menjawab nggak, Dit?
Menjawab, Bu. Menjawab. Thank you Matthias. Terima kasih Bu Ama.
You're welcome. I have another thing that I want to tell them. For example, something that is happening and also in Indonesia that is very common right now, because these big tech companies, let's say the names, Facebook and Google, they are getting all the money that was supposed to go to the news for them, because the ads all go to these platforms. And then the way that they start like paying what they the news is like in giving these temporary grants, and these organizations here in Latin America, and most likely it's happening also in Indonesia, are receiving these grants for temporary projects. And then they use, for example, because it's a lot of money, so they used to hire 1-2 people for 2 years, and then after that they don't have more this money, but they develop something that is innovative, because that's like the idea of the project. So you bring, for example, artificial intelligence in your newsroom, and then you develop I don't know, a news product that analyze what audience likes, and then according to their likes you show their news to them. So, and then this, for example, Google News Initiative is like that. So they gave a lot of money, and you develop for that for 2 years. So it's like this revenue that comes from just a short amount of time, but it's like what is happening. So you have to sell this idea to them and say how your organization can achieve that. I personally not a fan of that. I think it's not a way of doing business, but that's for you translate.
Oke. Jadi sumber pemasukan lainnya adalah dari Facebook dan Google. Tadi seperti yang disebutkan Dibi ya, mungkin kalau ada yang masih ingat gitu ya, pas kelas online journalism saya pernah jelasin bagaimana kue iklannya media. Dulu kan iklan semua larinya ke media, tapi dengan kehadiran Facebook dan Google, akhirnya justru mereka yang menguasai iklan. Jadi media itu banyak kehilangan pemasukan ya karena kehadiran 2 raksasa platform daring ini. Nah akhirnya karena banyak yang protes juga ya sama Facebook dan Google berusaha ngasih duit gitu ke berbagai perusahaan media. Ini lo tak kasih duit, kembanginlah itu perusahaanmu gitu. Entah untuk kamu menciptakan artificial intelligence di perusahaan atau apapun lah, bikin project apapun di perusahaan. Jadi itu salah satu cara mungkin penebusan dosa gitu ya bagi Facebook dan Google gitu. Dibagi itu kayak piece of cake-nya mereka doang ya, kayak ujung kuku penghasilan mereka dibagi-bagi ke perusahaan media. Karena banyak perusahaan media yang protes memang, karena nggak terima, ini konten kita yang bikin, tapi yang dapat untung kan Facebook sama Google. Walaupun kalau menurut Matthias ini nggak bagus juga sih, karena itu hanya menyelesaikan masalah temporary aja, sementara doang, tidak menyelesaikan masalah secara berkelanjutan. Gimana nasibnya perusahaan media ketika semua iklan itu larinya ke Facebook dan Google? So yeah, Matthias.
Yeah. Do you know any case that they receive money from Google there? No one, anyone knows?
I did mention to you that I kind of collaborate with journalists and Google News Initiative. I think that's where the money goes.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, this is for university, I guess. But they have also only for news organization that, for example, here, there is one organization that developed, I try to remember the project. Oh yeah, a bot for Facebook. No, sorry, a bot for WhatsApp. No, WhatsApp was also money from Facebook, from Facebook. But anyway, can be this Facebook money. So they gave money for then Facebook to develop a bot for WhatsApp. And then, yeah, it was like 2 years, this project. So it's like, I don't know, a lot of money. They could hire 2 people, but these 2 people are hired just for 2 years. After this, they don't have this money again. It's not renewed. So it's like one-time project that has a beginning, a middle, and an end date. So yeah, it's another revenue stream that organizations are finding, but it's not, I don't know, it's not a good one.
Not sustainable.
Yeah.
Jadi contoh dari Matthias ini, pemanfaatan uangnya itu misalnya Facebook atau Google gitu. Tadi contohnya kayaknya Facebook ya. Facebook membiayai suatu perusahaan media atau meng-hire lah gitu ya, meng-hire orang-orang untuk bikin news bot di WhatsApp gitu. Jadi uangnya dibikin untuk itu, untuk selama 2 tahun kamu harus ngembangin itu. Jadi gimana caranya membuat bot tersebut gitu sih. Matis nanya contoh di Indonesia apa ya? Ada nggak ya kira-kira teman-teman pernah dengar Facebook atau Google mendanai suatu project yang berkaitan dengan berita ataupun media? Iya, Dip?
BDC pernah.
Gimana tuh?
Malesbanget.com. Jadi malesbanget.com itu punya konten modelnya memang ini sih soft selling gitu. Jadi kontennya di YouTube modelnya kayak tadi yang Matthias kasih contoh, pakai baju H&M terus dijadikan video dan lain-lain. Nah cuman yang waktu itu yang mensponsori malesbanget.com itu Facebook kalau nggak salah.
Okay. So Matthias, DB, I was asking, is any of them know the examples that happens in Indonesia that news media organization got funding from Facebook or Google? And according to DB, there is one native online media called malesbanget.com. They get it's more like doing advertising, like what you mentioned about wearing T-shirts in
product
in
placement.
Yeah, but the product placement is like Facebook. Facebook is trying to do product placement in media content, something like that.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's rarely happened because Facebook is already popular.
Yeah. But here, for example, in the TV, we are seeing ads of Facebook that we haven't seen ever, I guess. And now, I don't know, it's because people are moving to other social media platforms and they are worried, so I don't know.
But yeah, they're moving to other platforms owned by Facebook anyway, like Instagram.
Yeah.
So the money is still
Instagram.
In the family.
Yeah.
Ya, jadi makasih buat contohnya, Dip. Karena ternyata menurut Matthias memang Facebook juga kayaknya karena merasa mulai kehilangan audiensnya, dia juga mulai beriklan, bahkan beriklan di TV gitu. Itu kan media konvensional, tapi platform daring beriklan produknya di media konvensional gitu. Jadi kan kita bisa lihat, oh ternyata terjadi pergeseran, Facebook mungkin mulai tidak populer, dan jangan nanti TikTok mengalahkan Facebook, kita kan nggak tahu ya perkembangan ke depannya. Walaupun teman-teman mungkin sebagian masih sinis, apa sih TikTok? Nanti biasanya yang kalian siniskan sekarang bisa jadi beberapa tahun lagi kalian yang aktif menggunakan platform tersebut. Ada lagi kah yang mau bertanya? Or Matthias, do you have any other things to share with us?
Saya mau bertanya, Bu.
Oke, silakan.
Nah, kan kemarin saya ikut kelas Ibu, online jurnalis. Situ saya ada baca kalau The Guardian membuat inovasi dalam dalam model bisnis untuk mendapatkan pemasukan, contohnya donasi dan skema berlangganan. Namun mereka mengalami kerugian, Bu. Nah, pertanyaan saya, apakah ada model bisnis donasi yang membantu perusahaan untuk survive di saat ini? Dan apakah kita yang memberi donasi ini mendapatkan keuntungan?
Oke, makasih Rivaldo. So Matthias, there is another question from Rivaldo. I was mentioned in other course, in other class, in online journalism class that like The Guardian, their way to get money is also from donation or subscription, but they are not really successful with that, right? So Rivaldo was asking, is there a way to make this subscription model is getting more successful for media organizations, and how this subscription model could benefit their audiences, or the donation models could benefit their audiences?
Yeah, I love his name. It's the name of the football player, the Brazilian football player. But anyway, so back to the question. So yes, The Guardian is relying on membership. So people is donating if they want to be part of this membership. But the difference that I think people donate to The Guardian is because their content. So I think one thing is like that, and then comes data journalism and other kind of content. I think is you do something that is different from the other organizations and find a niche that is interested in this content. I think that's very important. And for example, I need to come with another example from Argentina. They have a newsroom that is called Redacción, that it means network and action. So this explains a lot. So in this newsroom, they have like, how can I say, people that are part of this. So they have this membership model, but it's more a subscription. So people that they pay every month. So it's not a donation. And then people are really part of this news process. So they are being there discussing the things that the newsroom is going to cover. Or for example, they have their voice, for example, saying, oh, we don't like the way that you approach this topic. So can you say about the other topic? And then people go there and then produce a new news report about something that they ask. So I think bring the audience to be part of this news process, it's hard because as journalists, we know that we are like lone wolf, and then it's something that is a mindset change. But I think it would be important to people understand that it's like audience will see the value if they are part of this process, and also bring new forms of content, news games, data journalism, and things like that. So sorry, Amal, it's a lot to translate.
Oke, jadi Rivaldo pertama namanya dia suka karena katanya kayak nama pemain bola, iya ya, nama pemain bola di Brazil ya.
Iya.
Oke, terus dia bilang untuk supaya orang-orang tertarik untuk donasi ataupun melakukan membership ya, subscription ke suatu media memang sulit. Cuma ada beberapa hal yang bisa dilakukan yang juga tadi ya, apa sih untungnya kalau kita subscribe gitu ke suatu media, kita bayar. Misalnya media itu akhirnya dia harus bikin banyak inovasi di konten-kontennya yang tidak dilakukan oleh media lain. Misalnya salah satunya jurnalisme data, kemudian juga bikin konten yang benar-benar niche. Yang niche itu apa ya? Sangat terfokus. Misalnya fokus bahas isu-isu yang tidak diangkat oleh media lain. Kemudian juga tadi Matthias mencontohkan salah satu media di Argentina, Redacción, itu bagi orang-orang yang subscribe ke media mereka si subscribernya ini tuh punya suara gitu, diberikan didengarkan bahwa misalnya mereka bilang protes, aku nggak suka kamu kalau beritain isu ini dengan angle ini, atau kamu tuh sebaiknya beritain isu semacam ini gitu. Jadi kita nggak cuma nerima konten aja, nggak cuma jadi penerima yang pasif aja. Kalau kamu subscribe, kamu tuh bisa dipertimbangkan pendapatnya sebagai audiensnya. Karena kalau kita kan selama ini ibaratnya perusahaan media kita hanya satu arah aja ya. Kita nerima konten, oh ya udah ya paling kalau kesel ya kita viralin gitu kan ya paling, atau kita komen gitu ya, kita serang dengan beribu komen. Tapi ini ketika kamu subscribe kalau di media itu, oke, kalau ada subscriber kita yang protes berarti kita harus apa nih? Kita berarti harus ya mendengarkan suara dari si para subscriber media mereka. Gitu sih kurang lebihnya. Gimana Valdo? Ada tanggapan lagi mungkin dari jawaban ini?
Enggak sih, Bu. Terima kasih.
Oke, semoga menjawab ya. Dan sebenarnya juga mungkin nanti saya share ya, ada artikel menarik ya, beberapa minggu lalu saya baca di Remo TV ya, lagi-lagi di Remo TV. Saya kayaknya bagus jadi ambasadornya Remo TV, saya suka banget promosi platform ini. Jadi dia jelasin, memang sebenarnya sekarang tuh penting sekali peran publik, bahkan kalau bisa sih publik itu punya saham di media gitu ya. Kita sebagai publik, sebagai audiens kita juga punya saham misalnya di media, sehingga media mau nggak mau tuh harus dengerin suara kita gitu. Bagaimana publik tuh membantu membiayai media, tapi media akhirnya mau nggak mau tidak mementingkan para oligarki aja, para orang-orang berkuasa aja, tapi juga menjalankan tugas mereka itu tadi untuk mendengarkan suara publik, suara kita gitu sih. Jadi mungkin nanti saya share. So Matthias, I was telling them there is an interesting article written a few weeks ago that talks about because I reminded by your example of reduction with the subscription model, that there's an idea. How about if we as an audience, as public, like investing in media companies, like paying each month, and then the media should listen to our voices, something like that. Because it relates to the examples that happens in
this one redacción is exactly like that. They are listening that, but I have to be honest, they are not being very successful in being profitable, because I think they're a non-profit. I'm not sure, so I'm just saying, but still they are not able to, to pay all their bills by the end of the month. So it's something that is hard, but they're trying.
Oke. Jadi ternyata nggak terlalu cuan juga ya. Tapi mungkin karena juga mereka model bisnisnya mungkin mereka non-profit. Do they have any investor like to?
No, but they have grants from Facebook, grants from Google News Initiative. So they have also they got money from foundation. So it's like all this money that they have is like with an end date. So for example, the money from foundation, I think, is 2 years maximum, and then probably they can renew, but it's not for sure. And then the Google and the Facebook, no, it's like once and then it's gone.
So ya, jadi ternyata kalau si reduction ini kebanyakan sumber pemasukannya dari ini ya, grants atau pendanaan dari berbagai perusahaan atau organisasi, dari Facebook, Google, atau dari yang lain-lain ya. Itu kan sering ya, memang sering terjadi gitu ya, kita dapat pendanaan atau kita mengajukan untuk didanai, tapi itu kan hanya bertahan mungkin sekitar 1 tahun, 2 tahun, tapi setelahnya kan belum tentu didanai lagi. Sebenarnya ini kasusnya juga kayak Remo TV ya. Remo TV itu didanai oleh lembaga tertentu gitu, makanya kemarin tahun kemarin ya mereka sempat hampir kolaps gitu, hampir tutup sampai minta donasi di kitabisa.com, walaupun nggak sampai mencapai target, tapi lumayan lah untuk membantu mereka terus bertahan. Jadi banyak memang media sekarang itu karena misalnya dari iklan nggak cukup gitu, akhirnya bergantung pada pendanaan yang diberikan oleh lembaga lain. Gitu sih. Ada lagi kah yang mau bertanya? Atau aduh udah ngantuk Bu, udah jam 9. Mukanya udah muka bantal. Ada lagi yang mau bertanya atau sudah cukup? Sudah?
Sinak, Bu.
Kenapa, Dam?
Sudah cukup sepertinya, Bu.
Sudah cukup sepertinya. Tapi segini pulang loh, Dam. Jangan, yang pulang nih Ayu atau Adam atau dua-duanya yang pulang. Ini saya nggak tahu itu rumah siapa ya. Katanya kan di rumah, bukan di luar gitu ya tadi katanya. So, Matthias, I think there are no more questions from the students, and it's also already kind of late over here.
Yeah,
It's most likely they are already sleepy. So, but not because of your course. It's just because it's already late night over here.
yeah, no, I know.
So, thanks a lot, Matthias, for
Thank
sharing
you.
with us. I know you're a busy person, so it means a lot. Okay, before we end this session, let's have a photo sessions, online photo sessions. And
Oh, cool.
so, teman-teman,
So,
tolong diaktifkan kameranya. Please activate your camera. So, and give your best pose before I screenshot the screen.
but
Silakan
thank you for having me here, and it was really good. I hope you like the presentation, and if you have any question, you can reach Amal or you can reach me. Please feel free. We have Google Translate. If you need anything, we can swap emails and Google Translate it, or I can have Amal as well, my Google Translate. But yeah, thank you.
Makasih banyak teman-teman. Jadi kalau mau nanya boleh langsung, tadi kan udah di-share ya alamat email sama akun Twitternya, atau mau nanya lewat saya pakai Google Translate boleh, dan mungkin boleh deh teman-teman aktifkan mikrofon dan ucapkan makasih ke Matthias dengan berbagai bahasa Anda lah. Mau bahasa Jawa kayak bahasa
Mau lihat ya Matthias.
Thank you, Matthias.
Thank you, Matthias.
Bujur melala Matthias.
Matur nuwun.
It
Mas
was so fun. Thank you.
Kelangkung sama Matthias.
Yo, gracias
Kelangkung.
Matthias.
So yeah, they were saying thank you in different language because Indonesia has a lot of dialects.
Yeah, true.
So now let's take the photos. I will count from 1 to 3. So 1, 2, 3. Once more. Sorry guys. Ulang lagi guys. 1, 2, 3. Once again.
Jesus.
1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you, Matthias.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matthias.
Good evening.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you all.
Nice to see you.
Bye.
Yeah.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Biar.
Kita langsung leave. So Matthias, thanks a lot. If you already have other things to leave the Zoom meeting, and we can continue through WhatsApp chats for our
Yeah,
other
sure. But yeah, thank you a lot.
Thanks a lot,
See you.
Matthias.
We exchange messages about the things that we need to do. Bye.
Bye.
Dadah.